Thanks for tuning in to the Empire Boxing Podcast. A huge thank you to our partners at Sting Boxing. It doesn't matter if you're into boxing for fitness, as an amateur, or as a pro, Sting has something for you. Head to their website, stingsports.ca, and use the code EMPIRE10 at the checkout to receive 10% off.
An Empire Boxing and Unlearning Network production.
Welcome back to the Empire Boxing Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay, and tonight we have a champion in the room. We've got Jaye Byard here, and he brought us his brand new title, the CPBC Western Canadian Bridgerweight title, which you got on the TAKEOVER 2 just recently. And I want to start by talking about that performance. I feel like as soon as the bell dropped, you were hunting for that moment. And how did that feel for you?
That felt so good. It was like the homecoming, the coming out party that I was supposed to have a couple of years late.
Yeah.
You know? So it really felt good to kind of come back and redeem myself. Have that opportunity to do that in front of the hometown really felt good.
Yeah, and you had quite a crowd that came out to support you. So this is a community from Surrey, kind of where you're based, or just kind of like all the touch points throughout your life, like people coming out for you.
You know, it was humbling. There was people from all over. I mean,
Awesome.
I had family come in from Toronto. I had friends of sponsors come in, flying in from Toronto. Yeah, it was just amazing to see how many people showed up, and it was kind of funny to see how many people were like, "Oh man, geez, yeah, I missed it," and I'm just like, "Yeah, you don't want to be that guy anymore."
Yes, for sure. It's interesting even for us too. We're posting about these fights 3-4 months in advance. We still have people being like, "Oh yeah, you have a show coming up. When is it?" We're like, "Come on, man, Mm-hmm. So I can feel that for sure. Welcome to the show. It is so nice to have you in the studio tonight. And I also wanted to say, from that last performance, I mean, I get the best seat in the house, and I was super impressed with your speed and your explosiveness coming forward. Is this something that you kind of always have in the arsenal, or have you been training this in the last camp?
Well, I think it's been there. It's just you guys seen it in spurts periodically, right? And now that I've been able to get everything to come together, it's just you're seeing consistency with it. And so, I was back in the gym the following Monday, basically getting ready for the next one. So, when you stay in the gym and you're able to take some of the things off the table that cause you to stay stuck in places, right? It's good to see. It's fun to see yourself continue to evolve, right? I'll be 42 here before the next fight.
I don't believe it. I
I don't either.
Not a chance.
No. And so it's kind of fun for me to look at 42-year-old fighters on YouTube and then look at myself and I'm like, I guess there's a lot left in the tank.
That's so cool. Yeah, it definitely was a very fine-tuned, refined version of you, and the confidence and the prowess that you had. You had just complete control of the ring from the moment the first bell rang. So it was a beautiful performance and a hell of a knockout. And we've been recently putting out some cool footage, and Jason's got the mastery of that. And we had that overhead cam this time. Shout out Eric. That was just amazing. So we've been able to capture some really good clips of some of your highlights.
Yeah, that was hot. That
right?
reel you guys put out today was sick.
It was super fire. So shout out Jason. Nice work. Jay, tell us about where boxing began for you.
Wow, boxing began for me in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I used to box at the old Citadel Boxing Club, and I grew up with a murderer's row of champions in our gym. I started boxing at about 10 years old. I started getting bullied in the neighborhood when we moved back to the neighborhood, and if I had to run to the gym after school, then so be it. And eventually, I kind of, started accomplishing some things and visualizing the next step for me, right? But for me, I was always told if I came to the gym every day after school, I'd be a champion. And, it was good to see that happen and build on that. And then we were kind of just groomed to expect to have success, right? So...
That's a really interesting, that's an interesting quote, expect to have success and being groomed for that. Tell us about what that felt like as a young person being told by your coaches and your authority figures in the gym. Like, what did that mean and what did that feel like for you?
Well, it was eye-opening because you realized when you got to the gym after school that the seniors were all there doing their thing. We didn't really have any pros per se in the gym at that time. They would generally kind of move away from Halifax, right? But they'd end up having successful amateur careers, and I think we had 5 Olympians in our gym in '96. 3 of them went to our gym, went to the Olympics from our gym to Atlanta. And so, I was 15 coming up at that time and had an opportunity to get ready with all those guys. that were at the North American qualifying rounds and stuff. So the seniors like Jean-Francois Bergeron, you know, guys like David Defiabon, guys like Troy Ross, guys that are now, you know, Canadian legends that had their careers were the guys that I was cutting my teeth on in the gym as a kid, right?
Yeah. And what was that like from like sparring experience when you were a kid? Like, you know, you must have been sort of in awe, but like slightly terrified.
Honestly, I wasn't. I was like, I went to the gym every day. And like when I had a heavyweight Olympian to spar with, I wanted to be the senior super heavyweight champion when I was the intermediate champion. So I was always looking at that guy as that's my next competition.
Right.
You know, when I get to be a senior, right? So I've got to get it in the gym right. So I didn't think about being afraid. You know, I really just figured it was my obligation to go as hard as I could, right? Our coaches did not soft spar, nobody soft spar.
Yeah.
It was like, you wouldn't even get it. You wouldn't be allowed in the ring. You had to come hard.
I feel like that was a lot of boxing culture back then as well. It's sort of like, I think there's, for better and for worse, maybe there's an evolution in how coaches are approaching sparring, the frequency of sparring, the intensity of sparring. Yeah. But that definitely seems like sort of that quintessential classic look at how, you know, like what you were talking about, how guys cut their teeth and girls in the gym as well. It's just, it's your fighting. we're fighting, you know?
Absolutely, right? Like you learn, like training is training. Like the real thing is the real thing, right? And sparring is still different than the real thing. And, you know, you can share that experience, competition versus sparring. The level of intensity, obviously the level of, you know, kind of danger that's presented with smaller gloves and less protection on the head. So, you know, I think we were taught, obviously, defense wins championships as well, right? So all of our guys were really good defensive fighters that I grew up around. So I grew up watching these guys in the gym. When I wasn't able to do those things, that's who I was patterning myself after, right? So, you know, like I said, I was fortunate to have 5 Olympians in our gym to pattern myself after and to train with and to constantly be competing against. And it wasn't fun. Like there was days it was like, man, geez, this is going to suck going to the gym today. I know I'm going to have to spar hard because I know I'm going to be sparring with our super heavyweight and our heavyweight. But you know, like I am the man I am in the ring today because of those guys. Right. So I'm forever grateful for those men.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible experience for your kind of your early part of your career. Now, at what point did you start fighting? What was your first fight experience? I
had my first fight at 11 as soon as I was basically able to compete under the amateur boxing rules and regs. So I had a good year and a bit under my belt of training before I had my first amateur competition.
And how did that feel? Do you still remember that?
I do.
You never forget, right?
No, you never forget it. It was hilarious because we went up to Cape Breton, and it was the first time I had ever been to Cape Breton, and we went to a club show where I'm fighting a local guy, right? So, you know, it was an atmosphere and an energy that I wasn't really expecting.
Immediate underdog.
Yeah. And it was like basically in a bingo hall. So it didn't have a high roof, right? You know, you're almost roofing out in the ring. So like it really just felt like everybody was on top of you, right? And I was fortunate I won that first competition by a stoppage because I threw an overhand left and I had a hairline fracture in my thumb. And that's why I remember that fight, because basically there was no x-ray department in the hospital at that time because they were rebuilding the hospital. So I had to wait to get back to Halifax. And then it took me about a week and a half to finally get in there. And it was because it wouldn't stop, like the swelling wouldn't go down. I was like, maybe I should go in. And I realized, okay, I got a hairline fracture. And
from that overhand left.
And like, there's nothing he could do about it. And I guess I knocked his front tooth out. So that's what happened. I whacked him.
When tooth meets thumb.
Yes. And basically I showed up to the corner at the end of the second round, getting ready to go out in the third. And I'm just like, oh coach, I can't. I think I broke it. And
he's like, get your ass out there.
Yeah. He's like, just jab, Jay. That's all you need to do, right? I'm like, I can't. And then they rang the bell and I jumped back up. He's like, get out there. So I got out there. And then they rang the bell again. And I'm looking at my coach all confused. And the ref and the doctor came over, took a look at him, and they waved it off. And I'm just like,
No way, thank God, because my thumb hurts so bad.
Right? So, but it always hurts less when you win. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, that's an amazing first experience, Cape Breton. Like it's funny those early amateur shows. I have like such fond memories of being in the darkest, dingiest, grossest, like whatever. And then it only, as your amateur career and like your pro career, it starts getting nice venues and stuff like that. But that's kind of like the fun of it, isn't it?
Oh, big time.
And there's like nobody there.
and it's like, that show happens and it doesn't change the grand stage of boxing globally, right? But for you, that's your first real experience, and that's generally when you're like smitten with it, right?
Yeah, and you felt just like, this is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I got one under my belt now. Okay, if I can get one under my belt, then it's possible to win a title someday. And it was a couple of years later, I won my first provincial title. So, that was awesome as well. Right?
Now, when your coaches kind of got a hold of you as a young guy, like, were you pretty naturally athletic and developed already in that area? And if so, was there a sport that came before boxing for you?
No, not really. I think boxing was really the first one. Like, I started messing around with basketball and stuff in the neighborhood, but I wasn't really excelling at it, particularly the way I did with boxing. But right around the time I won my first Canadian title, so like 12 years old, I won my first heavyweight amateur title, and I started playing like basketball for the school and stuff, and I found that really helped. There's a lot of transferable skills, and now that I'm a coach and trainer as well, like I'll try and use those comparable analogies and stuff for people, right? If they come from another sport, I try and find a way to transfer those skills or that language that they're used to, right, in a way that we can, use it in boxing terminology for them. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So curious, like, how do you communicate that with someone? Like one of your clients, like what's an example of something?
Well, sometimes like when people are having a hard time with getting comfortable with stepping forward when they're throwing punches or whatever, I'll say, okay, well, if you come from a basketball background, you're used to the triple threat stance, right? Okay, so in that stance, basically it's the exact opposite of what you would be as a boxer, right? So if you're a lefty, you would be actually going to your left in that stance, and it would feel comfortable to you if you just switched it around. So when I switched it around and explained the terminology to them in those terms, it really kind of helps to streamline it, because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just like the jab step with basketball. So they get down in that crouch and they have, the proper mechanics for that then, and they start to explode with that jab. And then you just tell them, okay, now let's step forward with a punch there, right? And then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get this, right?
Yeah.
So it helps to be able to find ways that other people can relate to what you're trying to teach them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what an incredible way of putting it. That's such an important skill for a coach to have, is like the ability to communicate and relate.
Yeah.
And sometimes people need to hear it in their own terms and their own language. And I think that's
right.
a skill set that you develop as a coach, is like, how do I speak your language to you to teach you what I need to convey?
Exactly.
So that's brilliant.
You got to have range, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what brought you from Halifax to the West Coast?
Well, it was my extended vacation. And then, once I got out here, I found myself saying, I knew a lot of the names from BC. I knew some of the amateur fighters, and I knew some of the coaches from my younger days. And then when I got out here, I connected with one of the coaches that had moved out of the area at the time, but he was the former provincial team for Boxing BC. So I connected with him initially, and then some years passed again, about 11 and a half more years on vacation, relaxing, and then I bumped into to Manny Sabriel. He was actually one of the guys that I was inside with, had trained at the North Burnaby Boxing Club, and that was my first point of contact. So probably about 5-6 years that I corresponded with Manny and kept on the phone. Mm-hmm. He's probably thinking, geez, like, is this guy am I ever gonna meet this guy in person, right? But finally it did happen in 2019, and it was kind of an interesting experience there. Our first introduction was him coming to visit me and watch me train and do a little pads with me. And yeah, I think I threw up like 6.5, 7 plates on the deadlifts, and like just insane weight. And he's just like, oh my God, this is nuts, right? They don't think you need that kind of weight training, right? And I was like, yeah, right. And sure enough, I got out and realized it pretty quick, right? I had too much muscle on me, right? So. Right. You realize you have to make the thing that you want to do your priority. So
absolutely.
Like for 20 years, I just banged iron first, right? And then got my weights or my basketball in there or my hockey, right?
Yeah.
When I had the opportunity to come back to the sport, I had to make sure that boxing was the priority, right? Every day. Before I do conditioning, before I do anything else, get that out of the way and let the rest take care of itself, right?
So what are some of the most like major ways you've noticed that your lifestyle has shifted to allow boxing to be that one thing, that main focus?
I think it was probably the COVID pandemic and Fitness World, or formerly known as Steve Nash Fitness World.
Rip Steve Nash.
Oh yeah, using that little opportunity to get out from under the name scandal with the former basketball player and restructure the company, and basically scumbagged everybody that worked for the company loyally, right? And
I totally forgot about the whole Steve Nash.
Suffice to say, it was one of those. That was the pivotal moment when they offered me my job back, but took commission pays from the trainers and then took a pay level away and said, "Yeah, we want you to come back." And I'm like, "So okay, yeah, no, I think I'm just going to do this on my own." And so that was really when I took the time and the opportunity, really saved all my money and designed and engineered Jab Fitness, right?
So what year was Jab Fitness officially kind of born?
I guess 2020.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the beginning.
And then
of it,
what's
right?
it like been kind of being an entrepreneur and then a professional boxer kind of at the same time? Because it's like, 2 solid years to cut your teeth in a business and kind of turn all that around. So tell us about that whole experience for you.
Well, it leaves you with no free time. Honestly, it's 2 careers, not having one job and one career. It really is 2 careers. But one of the thing is, Danny Mack, who's really involved with myself and also some of the people that I have to answer to, right? He's always been quick to mention to them that, hey, like boxing is a pathway for Jay to set himself up for long-term success as well. He has success in the boxing ring. That's going to transfer out when he does step away from it into doing other things. Really, he was looking at that as the long or the medium term projection there, and I got out in front of it and I started it simultaneously. So I can use my boxing career to really establish my reputation as a trainer. And I think one of the blessings for me was that I went to Fitness World and I got a lot of extra training that I didn't pay for out of my pocket through my distance education and stuff that really opened my eyes to a whole different area of fitness and training and stuff, right? So now when I train people, I'm not just a boxing coach, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. And those credentials and that application in my own body, now it's really the billboard. It's like I can say, yeah, you can look at my clients and that's great too, right? And you're going to see the progress in there, right? You can also look at me. This is what Jab Fitness does. If you train consistently there, right? This is what my body looks like from the gym that I train at. So, I work with Frankie and at Box to Fit, and we pretty much take care of like the skill development aspects there. Mm-hmm. And now since we can't get no smoke out here, we just go back east and find people to beat up in Toronto. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember the last time we were kind of chatting a little bit, and you were mentioning that you were heading out east to spar for the last fight. Yeah. Tell us about that experience. Did you get some good work while you were out there? Yeah,
it was awesome work. Yeah. Met some new people, some new contacts. Had an amazing time sparring. I think I sparred 4 days in a row, took 2 days off, then sparred 2 more days in a row. 3 of those 6 days that I sparred twice in that day, and then only had about 4 hours of time in between the sparring sessions, like glove touch to glove touch. Yeah. So like I was spent. There's
what
no
are you
two ways
doing in
about
those
it.
4 hours? Like having a nap, like getting
taking
a foot rub,
taking a hot shower, slamming some fluids into me, getting a few hammer gel packs into me to like try and get some potassium into me, maybe some fruit, some dates. But honestly, I start just, trying to get my body ready for the next one, right? Because, within 3 hours, your body starts to tighten up, the DOMS really starts to set in from a hit session, right? And it's like my body's locking up and I'm like, okay, I got to go get in the shower now and start this rolling out business that I do and get myself ready. But, at the end of the day, I proved my point out there, I think. And, God help people when I'm fresh. That's all I can say. Yeah,
it was a really, that's exactly what it was. It was a real fresh look at you. And I think it's just like a snapshot into what could be for you. As you continue this, like what I'm getting a lot from you is you have a really strong sense of discipline. Is that something you'd agree with?
Absolutely.
And I feel like that was probably instilled in you even from the early stages, like heading into those gyms in Halifax and, doing your work with that. I feel like they instilled that discipline in you.
Yeah, they did. I think, even though there was times in my younger years where I might have floated away from the gym for, consistently for, a month or two, I was back in the gym because, I knew, okay, I got to get ready. The nationals are coming or the provincials are coming, or this is who I am. I can't be letting myself fall off. Right. And, there was two, I guess, polarizing forces in life, right? Like there was my boxing and that was my way out and that was my path. That was my goal and my focus. But then once I left the boxing club every day, right, then there's reality of being a kid that had a lot of challenges and stuff, right, that were going on. So, basically, I had to learn the hard way. But I think that all the lessons that you need to learn to be a successful professional, I learned just a really abstract kind of way, right? And there was a lot of pain and suffering associated with it. But, now the difference is that instead of being maybe that 22, 23-year-old guy coming, back and being successful from a campaign and going out and partying or throwing my money away on materialistic things, right? Like I'm back in the gym the following week and I'm getting ready for the next guy and I'm harassing Danny to find me another body, right? And he's so, that's just really, for me, that's what it is. Like I want to go hard until I'm done. And when I'm done, I know I'm going to be done. And I believe that when I'm done, that I'm going to be in a conversation with some pretty elite company because I just believe that it's going to happen. Interesting
idea, and like, something to kind of unpack a little bit is the idea of like, how does a boxer know when they're done? How do you relate to that?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is just that until somebody beats me up, and I mean like beats me up, right? I don't think I'm gonna want to even consider that, right? But like I've watched every fight that I've lost so many more times than I've watched the ones that I've won. I think I've watched the last one once. But like I watched those ones that I lost over and over and over and over, and it just ate at me. And like I'm the kind of guy that just cannot accept losing without wanting to get some retribution, to get that rematch. Guys that had beat me, they didn't want to take those rematches, because they know they were lucky. They caught me before I was really ready, right? And when you're an amateur and you come up and you have, a name behind you and you got some steam, right? You're going to have promoters that want to help. You're going to have money backers that are going to want to put some money into you, that are going to help develop you, right? When you have to take the journeyman route or you're even in a worse position, then you really have to find a way to do it yourself, right? Because those opportunities aren't really going to be there, right? So being an older fighter, I have to constantly educate the world that I'm 41, but I took 19 and a half years off of competition. So like, how did I really age if I was just training my ass off and just waiting for that opportunity, right? Really the one thing that, I can't get back is that for 20 years, I didn't continue developing and expanding my skills in like a real tangible way. Right. But I still studied the game. I still watched all my former teammates, Canadian national teammates, pursue their careers. And so, that was the burn as well. Right. To watch my guys winning world titles and family members fighting for world titles is like, someday, man, I'm going to be that guy. And, the stage is really set. The Bridgerweight division was like a gift from God. He said, Jay, you're never going to get those years back. But here, you know what? I'm going to throw you a bone because there's 50 guys in my division ahead of me in the world. And I know they don't want it as bad as I do.
Going back to what you said about watching the fights you lost more than the fights you won. That's such a interesting thing about those losses or lessons, you can call them too. They're truly like the most pivotal moments in us developing and reaching that next level is to what can I glean from the experience of a loss or a lesson. Yep. And it seems like you've really taken like full advantage of the opportunity to just analyze yourself and dig deep and to focus on that as your fuel to kind of move forward. And that's really cool. That's again, going back to like a lot of discipline and in your, in your heart and in your mind as well as your physical, body. Now tell us about your clients and people you work with Jab Enterprises. What kind of what really gears you go up? Like who do you really love to work with? What type of clients?
Honestly, I'd say half my clientele, or more than half, are not even boxing related. So I'm working with
Gen
people.
Pop kind of.
Yeah, they're working on recovery issues, healing from previous injuries and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that in between rehab or physio, right, and getting back to being 100. So I really enjoy helping people correct their therapy and posture. Stuff takes a lot longer, but the rewards.
It's not the glamorous stuff, but it's the essential foundation, right?
Well, when somebody walks upright and they don't have pain in their neck and their back anymore, and they were almost crippled, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Or they can walk straight, or they can run now and they couldn't before because their leg was so adducted out, because of a leg injury or a knee injury, right? So those things for me are rewarding because it's fun teaching people how to box, right? But most people aren't learning that sport for life and death or the quality of life. When somebody comes to me that's, dealing with an injury they've had for a long period of time, or the affects of that, right? There's a lot there that you have to peel through and kind of delve into. A lot of it's not even training, right? So you got to have a lot of different skills and specializations to get the most out of people. And I'm fortunate. Everybody that trains with me, they want to come. I don't have people canceling. I don't have people, when people come work with me, they don't leave, right? They stick with me, and they continuously renew. And for me, that's really... that's the biggest compliment and the biggest tip they could give me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I understand the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, those
it's mutually
ones
beneficial too.
Absolutely, right? That relationship is something that you both end up building and kind of relying on in a matter of speaking.
Symbiosis kind of in a way, right?
Yeah, I miss my clients when I go away to training camp, and it's funny because I'm pretty sure almost everybody just takes the time off, right?
Thank God. It's interesting because I'm in the same boat as you, and I do struggle as kind of a business owner in the industry as well. It's just taking time off is so challenging because there's really, if you're not doing it and working the hours, ain't nobody getting the work done, and then you're not getting paid or whatever.
Absolutely.
So it is a tough balance.
Absolutely.
So has that been something that you've really had to work on? If you brought anyone else in to scale it, or is that just something you kind of take on the chin and it is what it is, and your clients will be there when you come back, kind of thing?
Really, it's one of those things that I don't think I could bring somebody in just the way that I have the home business set up.
Right.
I've thought about other options for passive residual income through my gym and stuff. But right now, I just think it's keeping it simple. I look at it this way. I don't have a lot of clients, but I have the ones that I need in front of me, and those are the ones that I'm supposed to be looking after, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, God gives me what I need. I don't have to worry about a whole lot. I mean, when I stress about it, it seems to always find a way to come through, right?
Right.
And so I just keep working hard, and sure enough, everything's kind of coming true that I believed, that I manifested over those years. And the other people around me are starting to believe as well. So that feels really good.
Now your gym is like a home setup, yeah?
Yeah.
Kindred spirits here. Okay, so how much fucking fun was setting up your home gym and creating a space and buying all the cool equipment? Is there stuff you haven't got yet that you want to get? Where are you at with that?
I had a blast, because I don't have any trades under my belt, right? Like carpentry or anything like that. But literally to design and to engineer that and to do it, by piecemeal, and to do it and not incur any debt. Those were things that I was really proud about and I was really happy about, right? Because it meant that all the stuff that I took as far as curriculum and business and entrepreneurship, that I retained that stuff, you know what I mean? I was able to keep costs low. I did everything myself.
Yeah, the old DIY.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, fantastic.
I felt proud about the end result, right? And space is really a limiting factor for me, so I have to really be careful about what I want to try and pick up.
Right.
I've found that for some reason the tools for boxing seem to be coming more to me lately as additions to the gym. But I have a lot of heavy plates kicking around for people that want to just do the mindless. Right?
I love it. Some hoisting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, every once in a while I get bored and I start throwing the stuff around too. But more than anything, it's just it's more just for content, right?
For sure. So anything on the wish list equipment wise that you have, you kind of want to get?
Yeah, actually, you know, I do. I want to get the water bag. You guys might have seen me whacking away at Hidden City Fitness there.
The aqua bag?
Yeah, I've got the small one and I really enjoy that, but I want to get that bigger one as well because I could really, I could whack away on that all day long. It's beautiful.
Sick. Yeah, they're very cool. And they've got a cool sensor system that they have built in now too.
Yes.
And I haven't tested it out yet. Don't hate me. But I do have one. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. So wicked. Okay. So what's next? Now you have the CPBC title. Is there anyone in the division that like, is eyeballing you, or who's coming for that title? Do you know?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm eyeballing everybody.
Yeah, okay.
I don't care who's eyeballing me. I'm eyeballing everybody. And if you're in my division, I'm looking to put you to sleep. So basically, we got some stuff in the works right now.
Okay.
I'm probably not at liberty to talk about it.
Not yet.
But soon enough, there'll be details that we'll be able to share with everybody. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity that will be coming up. I'm pretty sure everybody will find a way to get it done. And there'll be lots of exciting announcements to.
Absolutely. We can't wait. We're chomping at the bit over here. And also like a huge shout out to you for being really skillful and being able to market yourself the way you do. That's something that, we work with and notice in fighters, and obviously as promoters, it's easier for us when a fighter's very motivated to market themselves, to get sponsors, and to have people on board with them. Especially at this level, like where we're, a new business as well, starting up, and we're looking for everyone to have the same sort of ferocity, elevating themselves as we are, right? And so that's something I noticed, like you're doing very well, and you're able to get a ton of sponsorship and a lot of support. And how did that come naturally to you? Did you just hit the pavement? Or like, screw it. I'm going around and telling people my name and saying what I'm doing, or how did that come to be for you?
No, actually, it was probably it was probably 5 years of getting nowheres at all and having doors closed in my face.
Ain't that the truth, though?
Chasing leads that turned into nothing, and really, what happened was, I ended up coming to start work with Frankie at Box to Fit, and it was one of those things where I just put my head down and started grinding, and just said to Danny, look, you gotta find something for me, right? Because, really it was his feedback as a mentor some years ago when I wasn't able to even get going yet, still hadn't even turned pro. He's like, Jay, I don't know what to say to you, man, but if you really want a career, he said, this is what you're gonna need, man. He said, you're gonna need money. He said, you're gonna need a financial backer or a promoter. He said, you're gonna need a manager or somebody that can put you in a real situation. And he said, you're gonna have to basically prove everybody wrong because they're gonna believe that you're old and that you don't have the juice anymore, right? So you're gonna always be in a situation where you're constantly having to prove yourself. He said, but if you get that financial backing, he said, it needs to come from not the sport of boxing. Yeah. He said, because everybody's so friggin' jaded and miserable. He said, that's in this sport that you just...
Accurate quote. Yeah, it can be that way.
Yeah. So, really, I took those words to heart, and, I guess if nothing more, I don't think I'm inaccurate by saying that, even when George Foreman came back, he didn't have financial backing. He didn't have a promoter. He had to invest in himself. And, on some level, I took some of those lessons and I had to apply those and try and parlay it into something. And I think there was some concern, about making the right decisions, but I think everything worked out the way that it needed to. And now this year looks like it's a strap season tour. I just think this year we're going to be coming after every belt that we can possibly come for.
Wicked. I mean, are you looking to step outside of the Bridgerweight division or to stay in it?
Oh, well, I believe that this was a test and it was also a gift. There's an opportunity I could easily fight up in that division. And there's all kinds of guys I think I'd make light work out of. But
just slap on a few more plates on that deadlift to get there.
Yeah, but this was a gift. And sometimes if you don't, treat things with respect and care, then you lose them, right? And so I believe really strongly that there's a lot of people that are still purists in the game that don't want to see the Bridgerweight division created, right? They're not in there fighting and taking the shots from a guy 6-7 inches taller than them and 30 pounds heavier, right? But they think it should still be that way because it's always been that way, right? I think it was actually the morally and ethically right thing to do by the WBC, and I really will be happy when the other organizations like follow suit and create that division and actually start trying to put something behind it, right? But like, I believe there's guys in the business that really look at the nuanced details. When you make weight, they're finding out about it. What did that guy weigh? Was he on weight? Was he overweight? Was he in that discretionary range? Was he taking fights out of his division? If he was, that sends a message to those guys that don't have the jam to do that, right? So yeah, I could fight outside of my division. I could have success, but I could also end up getting, unfortunately ran over by some big guy that just knows how to use his weight and size, right? And skill doesn't come into it. So I think we're at a point right now where we have a very clear path on how to get to the top. And I don't think any of those guys at the top of the Bridgerweight division in the world have anything when it comes to me. And it's just a matter of going out there every day and training, and every time it's time to show up for fight night, just destroying everybody. It's just, I'm not going for decisions. Like, I mean, when you fight me, you just better have your house in order, because I'm really coming to put you to sleep. Yeah.
Soundbite right there. That's what I want. What is like, I made it look like for you? Like that kind of phrase, if that rings to you, what would that look like?
Well, I made it. What that would look like is I'm hoisting WBC green and gold belt over my head. I'm 193 guys behind Tyson Fury right now. Right? And I'm a lot less behind the Bridgerweight champion. And I can tell you that these guys are in trouble when I get the opportunity to line up in front of them. Because I've been doing this, I've been training for them 31 years. Right? Anybody that's fighting me, I've been training 31 years for you. Just know that. Right? And I wouldn't want to fight any guy that spent 31 years training for me. I wouldn't want to fight any guy that trains like me, that has the seriousness in his way of doing things, right? I bite my tongue on how serious I am about this shit. Yeah,
wicked. I love that. Again, another soundbite. Chills. Okay, fun stuff. Okay, if you could fight anyone from the past, retired or expired, who would it be?
Honestly, I would probably want to fight James Toney.
Okay.
That he was probably 1A my favorite fighter growing up, and I got like the utmost respect for what he did in the game. He was just such a slick fighter, and I think a lot of people underestimated how good the guy's chin was, because he was cute, but he took a lot of shots in there, man. And I don't ever recall seeing his legs wobbling in there, not from the welterweight division to the heavyweight division, right? So
tell us about the game. What would the game plan look like for that fight?
Honestly, the thing is that I would probably have a hard time not smiling the whole time. Like, I would just be
so
like,
happy to be here, man, in the clinch.
Yes, this is the guy
Whispering in his ear.
that I patterned my head movement after, and I put the personal challenge out to myself. I wanted to be slicker than this guy. You know what I mean? I want to make sure when I come through fights, I'm untouched. And so, guys like that provided inspiration for me. Guys like Roy Jones and some of the gazelle punches and ridiculous stuff that he did that is like textbook, so unfundamentally sound, it's ridiculous. But like, when you're a superior athlete and your skills and your reflexes and your timing are just on a level above everybody else's, then you see stuff like that. Right.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but looking back at, I watched your fight against Taylor just recently, just again the other day. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I'm pretty sure I saw you come forward real fucking quick with a hook, lead hook. Yeah. So speaking of that gazelle punch, I mean, that's deadly. And I mean, our boy who just fought, last weekend was it? Tank Davis, known for that, that gazelle punch, right? Did you watch that fight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was exactly how I thought it was going to go down. I think I called the 5th or 6th round, and it was the 7th or something, and I just knew it. What was that like? Did you have a call on that fight as well?
I did. I actually called Tank by knockout, but I figured it was going to be a right hook. I didn't think it was going to be the left liver shot.
Do you think that was a statement punch against Ryan?
It was.
I think it was too.
And it's one of those things that I'm really noticing there's a trend now. I think probably in the last 20, 30 years, because in the school systems, kids are not being forced to be right-handed. We're seeing the natural progression of lefties start to, show up in the sport, and they're everywhere, and they're talented and they're sharp, right? And they see things from a different perspective. And what I'm noticing out there is boxing is one of those sports that people are slow to catch on to the trend, right? So, people are not recognizing that you better start learning how to fight lefties because we're coming with those straps, right?
Yeah.
You got 2 heavyweights now. You got that Big Bang Zhang that's got a strap, an interim strap. You got Usyk. It's got a strap.
He's one of my absolute favorite boxers to watch.
Absolutely.
Like the movement, he's like a huge dude that moves like Lomachenko almost. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's conditioning too, right? Like at the end
and
of
very
the
much
day,
style. That's the kind of that Eastern European style.
Absolutely.
A lot of Ukrainian boxers, they have that style of footwork.
Yeah.
They keep you circling to your lead hand.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, if you wanted to look at a heavyweight, a textbook heavyweight on how you do it, I mean, there's not too much that Usyk does that's flawed or that you could pick apart, right? And say, hey, he could improve upon that. Maybe, he could, add a little bit more power game to him, but that's gonna change who he is as well, right? So, that man can go 12 rounds with anybody at any pace.
I agree.
And,
so what do you think about some of the drama then with, not being able to get the contract with signed with Tyson Fury, and they were shit talking back and forth about money, and what's your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I think Tyson does a great job at promoting himself, creating a buzz. He's not afraid to do stuff and say stuff to create controversy or to create a bit of a buzz, right? I really admire the way Usyk handles his business. He's just a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's an honorable guy.
Yeah, he's just a dude.
He wants to show up and fight, sign the contract.
And then he wants to go home and hang out with his wife.
Exactly,
he's like the most
right.
normal, lovely person.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for how he conducts himself, right? And that's how a professional boxer should.
Yeah,
and a champion.
Absolutely. Good sportsmanship, good ambassador to the sport for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to love a bad boy too, like Fury and the whole family running their mouths and the gypsy ways. Like it is pretty entertaining for the sport, for sure.
There's no such thing as bad publicity, right? And that's the thing. Like when you realize that, then you can find ways to leverage it and market it, right? And so, one day you'll see him, being humble and contrite and talking about mental health awareness, and you can just see literally this is the act today, right?
Yeah,
He's
your
putting the
PR
acting
manager
job
said,
on.
"Hey,
yes, I gotta come and look humble and contrite, right?"
Yeah,
and then meanwhile, he's out there calling guys every obscenity and being as rude and disrespectful as you possibly can in an interview, right? And so you gotta sell. You got to sell, you got to build, but I think that there's a line, and then you got to also remember that there's people out there in the world that just don't take disrespect kindly, right? And, he's lucky there's millions of dollars involved. There's some guys, I remember in the 80s, Mike Tyson, like and Tony Tucker, they were like fist fighting out in the street, you know what I mean? So like, he was breaking fools' faces in press conferences, right? For being disrespectful. And, I don't necessarily agree with that, right? But that set the stage. You knew when you showed up to show some respect, right? Carry yourself with a little bit of honor and a little bit of dignity, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I can't say that I have a lot of respect for how Tyson conducts himself, but he's definitely entertaining to watch. And, I can't take anything away from his skills. From a guy that size, to be able to do some of the things he's done is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even just his offense for a guy that size is pretty, like his movement for sure is pretty. I don't know many guys that big that could move like that. So he's definitely got a sauce for sure that he's developed.
But I know my opinion, I think realistically it's the size that's absolutely the predominant factor. Like if the Gypsy King was 6'3" or 6'4", we wouldn't even know who he is.
Yeah.
He'd be a journeyman fighter with a 500 record probably.
Totally. And speaking of dwarfing too, like, okay, so Andy Ruiz, is that confirmed? And how is that going to go down? Like he's punching at like waist height with Ruiz, but Andy Ruiz is a fast guy.
He is, and he doesn't waste a lot of punches. He's, he doesn't bounce around a whole lot, wasting energy out of his legs, right?
Yeah, he's pretty planted.
He's going to sit there and wait for his opportunity to explode.
Yeah.
Tyson, he does, like, he has good reflexes and timing, but he also goes through those phases of, like, complacency in there, right? Where you can just tell he's on autopilot. His hands are low. He's throwing his jab from down here. His right hand's down around his boobs, right? And, if somebody's in the proper position, they could take advantage of that, right? That's a little closer to his size, I think. Right?
So do you think that's a fairly competitive fight then? Something Tyson should be, not so cocky over?
Well, what I do think is that Tyson's kind of been on cruise control the last couple of years, right? And since the Wilder fight, really, he's been just on easy street.
Yeah.
And I think that can actually rent space in your head as a fighter. If you're in there against soft opposition or guys you fought 3 times where it's a glorified sparring match for a whole bunch of money. Basically that's going to start renting space in your head when you have to fight somebody for real. Now, I think Andy's got a whole lot of issues as well. I've heard he's got some personal stuff that's, been out there in social media and stuff that could affect, his headspace and his ability to prepare for that. But if he's in a good place and he puts a good, strong camp in with the guy that he's with, it looks like he's got him in better shape. I think that's a really competitive fight. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did win it, to be honest. I think he would probably end up winning it by a surprise knockout win or something. But I think, it's one of those weird things. Sometimes you can be so small, it's an advantage, right? And Ruiz is 6'3", maybe, right? So he stays low. He's going to crouch. He's going to attack the body. It's going to be a real interesting one if that does end up happening.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that fight.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to touch on something that I thought was super impactful. When I interviewed you at the end of the last fight, you had some pretty amazing words, and I think that touched a lot of people. What did it mean to you to be able to say that in that moment?
I think it was a relief because I really started to feel kind of boxed in by it. And like originally when that nickname was given to me, I kind of felt a little conflicted with it initially, right? Because I've watched the documentaries. I know what's up, right? So there's a good and a bad side to that. But nonetheless, it kind of got stuck on me and I just ran with it. And then another nickname got slapped on me that was like, once again, just so unbelievably accurate from the business of boxing. But once again, just a really polarizing thing. So I ended up back with that same nickname and not feeling good about it. And then, really going into that fight, I felt like that was the right thing to do. And I felt like that was a great opportunity to get away from it. And I think I'm not going to regret that decision, right? Because like I don't have any ill will to any people of Latin descent, right? And certainly wouldn't want to feel like anything that I'm doing out there in the world or how I'm carrying myself is causing, hurt or upset or, negative feelings and emotions towards me, right? I got enough people that kind of hate on me without just jumping into the hat and, piling it on unnecessarily, right? So I feel good about that decision. And maybe my nickname is no nickname needed, right? Like literally that could be the nickname.
Yeah.
That guy doesn't need a nickname. He can stand on his own. Right?
Yeah, brilliant. The nickname is a really interesting part of the sport, isn't it? That there's been lots of guys that haven't had them, but, sometimes they kind of get, like you said, slapped on you and then you kind of end up wearing that. But I thought that was regardless, a super powerful moment, I think, for everybody. And I wanted to kind of commend you on that speech and what it took to say that and to drop that and the meaning behind that. I think that was brilliant. We had a lot of really, beautiful moments, at the end of those fights. And I was going like, man, like if there's a dry eye in the room right now, like you guys have no soul. So that was a cool moment. I wanted to touch on that with you.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about the camp going in. Like what are you spending your time doing right now? I mean, I guess you're kind of just touching on the edge of starting into camp life. So what's the schedule for Jay these days?
Right now, I'm pretty much 5 days a week with Frankie at Box to Fit, getting our work in there and, training people 5 to 7 days a week as well.
Yeah, it costs a lot of steam, doesn't it?
It does. And so, really, my routine isn't all that much different, whether I'm at the peak of it, towards the end of training camp or at the beginning of it. I really just keep that train, recover, and repeat mentality, right?
Tell us about some of the most impactful and most important parts of your routine that keep you sort of disciplined and focused.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I don't spend a lot of time out. I don't really have much of a social life because, you know, I've got so many commitments with those 2 careers, right? And then I also have my children that I try and spend as much time as I can with, right? So, you know, really I do have a full plate. I think for me, I try just not to take on too much. Because I'd rather do a couple of things really well than a bunch of things half-assed, right? So for me, I think knowing that the skill development portion right now is being able to get taken care of, but the you know, the contact part isn't. It still causes me some anxiety because I have to go to Toronto, take my little mini training camp there, and I'm going on my own. I don't have anybody there with me. I walk into a gym with my gym bag and I just put the work in, right? So, you know, I don't think about it too much, but I know that also sends a message too, right? Like that doesn't happen. People don't leave for a training camp, leave their whole team behind and just, you know, go solo, right? Yeah. So, I mean, once again, it isn't even about marketing or branding. This is just who I am. And so for me, it's just, I've allowed my sense of being to come out in my social media and in the world a little bit more so now, even, you know, with spirituality, just being more vocal about my stance or where I'm at, right? It wasn't like it was anything different. I was just not as vocal about it beforehand, right? So.
Did it take a little bit of extra, I don't know, courage or bravery to be more vocal or more honest about kind of what you really thought and how you felt?
Yeah, because I think, like, first of all, until you start having some success, people are going, that guy's fucking delusional. He's crazy. He thinks he's going to be a champion, right? It's like, okay, you know, you have to just remember at those points in time that it's temporary, right? And really, the only one that's going to stop you from achieving what you want to is yourself. It's those messages that you tell yourself when times are tough, right? Where you give yourself permission to quit or find a way, right? And I don't know how to quit at anything. If I did, I might have quit at something beforehand. But, you know, I think it's a harder road when you don't quit. But, you know, essentially this is now the back end of my career, which to me is still the peak of it. Like I don't see any sign of decline right now in my performance. I don't feel it in my conditioning. I don't feel it when I'm in there sparring against super heavyweights, you know. I was fortunate to get to spar with Ryan Rizicki, who's not a super heavyweight, but the guy can bang for sure. And, you know, all the other guys that I spar with there, Big 12 and those guys, all really big guys that bring out the best in me, right? So I look forward to going back there, even though I don't have my team with me, because it's almost like that's my surrogate home now, right? I hit those gyms and those guys are all looking forward to me coming through, right? I've built so many positive relationships and stuff like that on the ground in Toronto. So it's just been such a blessing.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Jay, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and coming out here to chat with us. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you and, you know, just a really well-spoken, thoughtful, you know, way that you kind of express yourself. And it's been just an honor to chat with you tonight. So thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. This has been another episode of the Empire Boxing Podcast with the champ, the CPBC title holder, Jaye Byard. We will see you next time.
Make sure to listen, follow, and subscribe to Empire Boxing on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.